The stagecoach rattled violently as it hit another rut in the dusty road, nearly sending Violet Preston flying from her seat. She clutched her modest carpetbag tighter and steadied herself against the wooden frame of the coach, trying to ignore the sinking feeling in her stomach. The year was 1875, and she was a 22-year-old mail-order bride heading to Sweetwater Creek, a small mining town in the Arizona Territory that she'd only seen in a crude sketch included in her future husband's letters. "First time out west, miss?" The older woman across from her smiled kindly, her weathered face creasing around the eyes. "Is it that obvious?" Violet attempted to smooth her travel-wrinkled skirts. "Everyone's got that same look when they first come out here, like they've made a terrible mistake." The woman chuckled. "I'm Martha Wilkins. Been running the general store in Sweetwater for 15 years now." "Violet Preston." She offered her gloved hand. "I'm to be married to Mr. Howard Jenkins." Martha's smile faltered slightly. "Howard Jenkins? The mine owner?" Violet nodded, her heart quickening at the woman's reaction. "Do you know him well?" "Well enough," Martha replied cryptically. "He's certainly a man of means." The stagecoach lurched again as the driver called down, "Sweetwater Creek, 10 minutes." Violet peered out the small window. The landscape was so different from her home in Boston, vast and wild, with red rock formations jutting dramatically against the cloudless blue sky. Beautiful, but unforgiving. "Why did you come all this way to marry a man you've never met?" Martha asked softly. Violet turned from the window, her blue eyes serious. "My father died last winter, and with him went our modest income. My mother followed him to the grave not 2 months later." She swallowed hard. "There were debts. The house was sold. I worked as a seamstress but couldn't make ends meet. Mr. Jenkins's advertisement promised security, a comfortable home." She trailed off, unwilling to admit how desperate her situation had become. Martha reached across and patted her hand. "Well, dear, I hope you find what you're looking for." The stagecoach rolled to a stop in front of a wide dirt street lined with wooden buildings. Sweetwater Creek was larger than Violet had imagined, though still modest by Eastern standards. A general store, a bank, several saloons, and various other establishments stretched down the main street. The driver opened the door. "Sweetwater Creek, folks." Martha descended first, then turned to help Violet down. "Where are you meeting your intended?" Violet glanced around uncertainly. "His last letter said he'd meet me at the stagecoach stop." They both scanned the small crowd, but no one stepped forward claiming to be Howard Jenkins. "Perhaps he was delayed at the mine," Martha suggested. "It happens often. Why don't you wait in my store? It's cooler inside, and I can offer you some tea." Grateful, Violet followed Martha across the street to Wilkins' general store. The interior was blessedly cool after the heat of the journey. Martha busied herself with a kettle while Violet sank into a chair, removing her bonnet and fanning herself. "How long have you been corresponding with Mr. Jenkins?" Martha asked, placing a steaming cup of tea before her. 6 months, Violet replied. "His letters were kind, businesslike, but kind." Martha nodded thoughtfully. "And he sent for you from Boston? That's quite a journey." "He said he wanted a cultured wife," Violet explained, sipping the tea gratefully. "Someone who could help him achieve a more refined standing in the community." Hours passed with no sign of Howard Jenkins. As the afternoon waned, Martha's concerned glances became more frequent. "I'll close up shop soon," she said finally. "If he doesn't arrive, you're welcome to stay with me tonight. We can sort things out in the morning." Just as Violet was about to accept the offer, the store's bell jingled. A man in an expensive but dust-covered suit entered, removing his hat to reveal thinning gray hair despite a face that suggested he was only in his early 40s. "Miss Preston?" he inquired, his voice carrying the refined tones of an educated man. Violet rose. "Mr. Jenkins?" "Indeed. My apologies for the delay." There was an issue at the mine that required my immediate attention. He bowed slightly. I trust your journey was tolerable? Yes, thank you. Violet glanced at Martha, who was watching the exchange with undisguised interest. Excellent. I've arranged for us to dine at the hotel this evening. I've also taken the liberty of reserving you a room there until our wedding on Saturday. Violet's eyes widened. Saturday? But that's only 3 days away. Is that a problem? Jenkins raised an eyebrow. I see no reason to delay. The minister is available, and I've already arranged everything. No, I suppose not, Violet replied, though her stomach tightened with anxiety. Good. I'll call for you at 7. With that, he nodded to Martha, replaced his hat, and departed as abruptly as he'd arrived. Martha waited until the door closed behind him. Well, she said, her tone carefully neutral, he seems efficient. Violet managed a weak smile. Yes, he does. The Sweetwater Hotel is just up the street. Let me close up and I'll walk you there. As they strolled along the wooden sidewalk, Violet noticed the curious glances from the townspeople. A new face was clearly a novelty in Sweetwater Creek. Don't mind them, Martha advised. News travels fast in a small town. Everyone knows you're Jenkins's mail-order bride by now. The hotel was a 3-story wooden structure, the most imposing building in town. Inside, the lobby was surprisingly elegant, with a crystal chandelier and polished wood furnishings. Mr. Jenkins arranged a room for Miss Preston, Martha informed the clerk. Yes, madam. Room 204, our finest accommodation. He handed over a key. Your luggage arrived yesterday, miss. Violet blinked in surprise. My luggage? But I only brought... Mr. Jenkins arranged for a trunk of clothing and necessities to be delivered from Tucson, the clerk explained. Said a lady needed proper attire. Martha and Violet exchanged glances. How thoughtful, Violet managed. In her room, Violet found an enormous trunk filled with dresses, shoes, and accessories, all expensive and in the latest fashion, though several years behind what was currently worn in Boston. Well, Martha said, examining a silk evening gown, he certainly wants you to look the part of a successful man's wife. The part, Violet repeated softly. Yes, I suppose that's what this is. After Martha left, Violet selected one of the new dresses, a deep blue silk with modest lace trim, and prepared for dinner. At precisely 7 o'clock, there was a knock at her door. Howard Jenkins escorted her to the hotel dining room, where they were seated at a private table. He ordered for both of them without consultation, then proceeded to inform her of his expectations. I require a wife who will manage my household efficiently and serve as hostess for business dinners, he explained between careful bites of steak. I entertain important investors frequently. You will need to learn the names and interests of all the significant mine owners and their wives in the territory. I understand, Violet said, barely touching her food. Mr. Jenkins, may I ask why you chose to seek a wife from so far away? He dabbed his mouth with a napkin. The women locally are either already married or unsuitable. The respectable ones lack refinement, and the unrespectable ones lack respectability. His thin lips curved in what might have been a smile. I need someone who can navigate social situations with grace, someone educated but without expectations of romance or passion. Your letters suggested you were practical in your outlook. I see. Violet looked down at her plate, wondering if she had indeed presented herself as cold and pragmatic in her desperate letters. Our arrangement will be mutually beneficial, Jenkins continued. You gain financial security and social standing. I gain a proper wife to complete my household. We need not complicate matters with sentimentality. The dinner concluded with Jenkins explaining that he would be busy at the mine for the next 2 days, leaving Violet to prepare for the wedding and familiarize herself with the town. The dressmaker has instructions for your wedding gown, he informed her as he escorted her back to her room. Visit her tomorrow for final fittings. At her door, he bowed formally. Good night, Miss Preston. I'll see you on Saturday. No attempt at a kiss, not even a touch of her hand. Violet wasn't sure if she was relieved or troubled by his detachment. The next morning, Violet explored the town. Sweetwater Creek was bustling with activity, miners heading to and from the silver mines in the hills, merchants hawking their wares, and cowboys passing through on their way to the cattle ranges further north. She visited the dressmaker as instructed and found an elaborate wedding gown already nearly complete. The woman, Mrs. Chen, was a skilled Chinese seamstress who worked silently and efficiently, making minor adjustments while Violet stood awkwardly on a small platform. Very beautiful, Mrs. Chen said finally, stepping back to assess her work. You make good wife for Mr. Jenkins. Thank you, Violet replied, uncertain how to respond to the assumption. Afterward, she wandered toward the general store, hoping to find Martha. Instead, she found herself passing the Silver Dollar, the largest saloon in town. The swinging doors burst open, and a burly, bearded man stumbled out, nearly knocking her over. Well, look what we got here, he slurred, grabbing her arm. You're a pretty little thing. New in town? Please release me, Violet said firmly, trying to pull away. Don't be like that, darlin'. His grip tightened. Just looking for some company. The lady asked you to let go. The deep voice came from behind them. Violet turned to see a tall man with broad shoulders and a weathered face partially hidden by a dark beard. His eyes were a startling blue beneath the brim of a well-worn cowboy hat. The drunk sneered. Mind your business, Flynn. Making sure ladies aren't harassed is my business, the cowboy replied evenly, his hand resting casually near the revolver holstered at his hip. The drunk looked between them, seemed to reconsider, then released Violet's arm with a muttered curse and staggered away. Are you all right, madam? The cowboy asked, his voice softening. Yes, thank you, mister. Owen Flynn. Sheriff Owen Flynn. He touched the silver star pinned to his vest that Violet hadn't noticed before. Violet Preston. She extended her hand, which he took briefly, his calloused fingers gentle against her soft skin. Miss Preston, you must be Jenkins's bride-to-be. News does travel fast here. He smiled, transforming his stern features. It's my job to know who comes and goes in Sweetwater. He gestured to the saloon. This part of town isn't the safest place for a lady alone. May I escort you somewhere? I was heading to the general store to see Mrs. Wilkins. Allow me. He offered his arm, which she hesitantly took. As they walked, Violet felt the eyes of the townspeople on them. I seem to be causing quite a stir, she observed. New faces always do, especially pretty ones. He cleared his throat. How are you finding Sweetwater? It's different from Boston. He chuckled. I reckon that's putting it mildly. What brought you all the way out here to marry Jenkins, if you don't mind my asking? Necessity, she replied honestly. And you? Have you always been in law enforcement? No, madam. Spent some years driving cattle up from Texas. Took this job about 5 years back when the old sheriff retired. Town was growing with the silver strikes, needed someone to keep order. They reached the general store and Sheriff Flynn tipped his hat. Miss Preston, it was a pleasure. If you need anything during your stay, my office is just down the street. Martha looked up from her counter as Violet entered. I see you've met our sheriff, she said with a knowing smile. He rescued me from an unpleasant encounter outside the saloon. Martha nodded. Owen Flynn's a good man, one of the best in these parts. Keeps this town safer than most in the territory. She paused. How was your dinner with Mr. Jenkins? Violet hesitated. Educational. He was very clear about his expectations. Martha busied herself with arranging items on a shelf. And are those expectations to your liking? They're practical, Violet replied carefully. He offers security, which is what I came for. Security's important, Martha agreed. But it's not everything. The next day passed in a blur of wedding preparations that Howard Jenkins had arranged without any input from Violet. By Friday evening, she found herself restless in her hotel room, overwhelmed by the speed with which her life was changing. On impulse, she decided to take a walk, despite the fading light. The air was cooler now, and the main street was quieter as businesses closed for the day. Only the saloons showed signs of life, their windows glowing and the sounds of piano music and raucous laughter spilling into the street. As she passed the Silver Dollar, the doors burst open again, this time disgorging 3 rough-looking men. They spotted her immediately. "Well, boys, look at this," the tallest one said, blocking her path. "It's Jenkins' fancy Eastern bride." Violet's heart raced. "Excuse me, please." "Not so fast, lady." Another man circled around her. "We don't take kindly to Jenkins and his type around here. Man thinks he owns the whole town." "I don't know what quarrel you have with Mr. Jenkins, but it has nothing to do with me," Violet said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Oh, but it does now." The third man grinned, revealing several missing teeth. "You're his property, ain't ya? That's how it works with mail-order brides." They closed in around her. Violet looked desperately up and down the street. But it was empty except for a few distant figures who hadn't noticed her plight. "Maybe we should show Jenkins he can't have everything he wants," the tall one suggested, reaching for her arm. The sharp click of a gun being cocked froze everyone in place. "Step away from the lady, now!" Sheriff Flynn's voice was steel. The men turned to find the sheriff standing behind them, his revolver drawn and aimed steadily. "This ain't your concern, Flynn," the tall one growled. "3 men threatening a woman on my street? That's very much my concern. Barton." The sheriff's eyes narrowed. "Now back away before I decide Sweetwater would be better off with you boys spending some time in my jail." The men hesitated. Then the tall one, Barton, spat on the ground. "Come on, boys. She ain't worth the trouble." With dark glances at both Violet and the sheriff, they retreated into the saloon. Sheriff Flynn holstered his weapon and hurried to Violet's side. "Are you hurt, Miss Preston?" She shook her head, though she was trembling. "No, just frightened. Thank you, Sheriff." "Those men work for the Triple R Ranch," he explained, gently guiding her away from the saloon. "There's bad blood between them and Jenkins over water rights. You shouldn't be out alone after dark. Especially not near the saloons." "I needed some air," she admitted. "Everything's happening so quickly." He studied her face in the fading light. "Having second thoughts about tomorrow?" "No, She stopped herself from automatically denying it. "Perhaps? Is that terrible of me?" "Not at all. Marriage is a big step, especially to someone you barely know." They walked slowly back toward the hotel, his presence beside her reassuring. "Sheriff Flynn, what kind of man is Howard Jenkins?" she asked suddenly. "Truly?" He was silent for a long moment. "Jenkins is complicated. He's brought jobs and money to Sweetwater, which we needed. But he's ruthless in business. Doesn't hesitate to crush anyone who stands in his way." He glanced at her. "I wouldn't call him cruel exactly, but I've never seen him show much kindness either." Violet's heart sank. It confirmed her own impressions, but hearing it spoken aloud made it more real. "I've made my choice," she said quietly. "I gave my word." "Words can be taken back," he replied gently. "No contract is worth a lifetime of unhappiness." They reached the hotel and she turned to thank him again. "Miss Preston," he said hesitantly, "if you need a friend in Sweetwater, I hope you'll consider me one." His sincerity touched her. "Thank you, Sheriff Flynn." He tipped his hat and waited until she was safely inside before walking away. Violet watched his retreating figure through the lobby window, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and something else she couldn't quite name. Saturday dawned bright and clear. Violet stood in her hotel room, staring at her reflection in the mirror as Mrs. Chen made final adjustments to the wedding gown. The dress was beautiful white satin with delicate lace overlay, more extravagant than anything she'd ever owned, but she felt like she was looking at a stranger. A knock at the door preceded Martha's entrance. "Oh my," she breathed, seeing Violet in her wedding finery. "You look absolutely beautiful." Mrs. Chen nodded in agreement, then packed up her sewing basket and left with a small bow. Martha approached, adjusting the veil in Violet's hair. "The whole town's turned out for the wedding. Jenkins has invited everyone of importance." She paused, meeting Violet's eyes in the mirror. "Are you certain about this, dear? It's not too late to change your mind." Violet swallowed hard. "What choice do I have? Return to Boston with nothing? Become a burden on distant relatives who made it clear they had no place for me? At least here I'll have security." "Security isn't everything," Martha repeated her earlier words. "And there are other kinds of security than marrying a man you don't love." "Love is a luxury I can't afford," Violet replied, smoothing her gloves. "Besides, Mr. Jenkins has been clear about his expectations. There will be no surprises." Martha sighed. "Well, it's your decision. I just want you to be happy." "I'll be fine," Violet assured her, wishing she felt as confident as she sounded. The ceremony was to take place at the small church at noon, followed by a reception at the Sweetwater Hotel. As the hour approached, Violet descended to the lobby where Jenkins' carriage waited to transport her the short distance to the church. The driver helped her in, and they set off. As they rolled down the main street, Violet noticed a commotion outside the bank. A group of men on horseback, bandanas covering the lower half of their faces, had surrounded the building. Her heart leaped into her throat as one of the men fired a shot into the air. "It's a robbery," she gasped. The driver cursed and pulled the horses to a halt. "Miss, we need to get off the street." Before he could turn the carriage around, one of the outlaws spotted them and galloped over. "Well, what do we have here? A bride on her wedding day?" More of the gang approached, surrounding the carriage. Violet shrank back against the seat as one of them reached for the door. "Get back." The driver pulled a small pistol from his coat, but another outlaw fired first. The driver fell from his seat with a cry of pain. Violet screamed as rough hands pulled her from the carriage. "Look at this, boys," the outlaw crowed, dragging her toward the saloon. "Jenkins' bride, this is better than whatever's in that bank safe." People scattered from the street as the outlaws dragged Violet toward the silver dollar. Inside, the few patrons still present at that hour quickly fled, leaving only the bartender cowering behind the counter. "You fellas better clear out," he warned, his voice shaking. "The sheriff will be here any minute." "The sheriff's busy with our distraction at the bank," the lead outlaw laughed. "By the time he figures out what's happening, we'll be long gone with Jenkins' pretty bride as insurance." He turned to Violet, his eyes cold above his bandana. "The mine owners cost us plenty with his schemes. Time he learned a lesson about taking what ain't his." Violet struggled against their grip. "You won't get away with this." "Oh, but we will, darlin'. Jenkins will pay a pretty penny to get his mail-order bride back in one piece." The saloon doors crashed open. Sheriff Owen Flynn stood in the doorway, his revolver drawn. "Let her go, McCoy." The outlaw holding Violet pulled her closer, pressing a gun to her temple. "Not a chance, Flynn. You're outnumbered. And we've got your lady friend here." Violet's eyes met the sheriff's, filled with a terror she couldn't hide. "I said, let her go." Flynn's voice was deadly calm. "This is between you and me." "And Jenkins," the outlaw snarled. "Man's been squeezing small ranchers dry for years, buying up water rights, running folks off their land. Time someone taught him a lesson." "Kidnapping an innocent woman won't solve that," Flynn replied. "It'll just get you hanged." 4 more outlaws flanked their leader, all with weapons drawn. They had the sheriff surrounded. "Drop your gun, Flynn," McCoy ordered, "or the bride gets a bullet instead of a wedding kiss." For a heart-stopping moment, Violet thought the sheriff would refuse. Then slowly, he lowered his weapon to the floor. "Smart move," McCoy sneered. "Now let her come to me," Flynn demanded. "Not so fast. She's our ticket out of here." Flynn took a step forward, his eyes never leaving Violet's. "Get behind me," he said to her quietly. "You're safe with me." "I said stay back," McCoy shouted, his grip on Violet tightening. In that moment, Violet acted on instinct. She stomped hard on McCoy's foot with her heel and twisted away as he howled in pain. Flynn lunged forward, tackling her to the ground just as gunfire erupted from all sides. "Stay down," he commanded, covering her body with his own as bullets splintered the wooden bar behind them. The shooting seemed to last forever, though it was probably only seconds. When it stopped, Flynn raised his head cautiously. 2 of the outlaws lay motionless on the floor. The others, including McCoy, were backing toward the rear exit of the saloon. "This ain't over, Flynn," McCoy shouted before disappearing through the door. Flynn helped Violet to her feet. Her beautiful wedding dress was torn and dirty, her veil askew. "Are you hurt?" he asked urgently, his hands gentle on her shoulders. She shook her head, too shocked to speak. The sound of running footsteps announced the arrival of several townsmen, led by the banker and a few miners who had responded to the commotion. "Sheriff, the bank robbery was just a diversion," one of them explained. "They didn't even try to get into the safe." "It was me they wanted," Violet realized aloud. "To get at Mr. Jenkins." Flynn nodded grimly. "McCoy used to own a small spread north of here. Lost it when Jenkins diverted the creek for his mining operation." He kept his arm around her, steadying her. "Let's get you somewhere safe. Those men might still be in town." "The church," Violet remembered suddenly. "Everyone's waiting. The wedding?" Flynn exchanged glances with the banker. "Richards, send someone to the church. Let Jenkins know what happened and that Miss Preston is safe, but the ceremony will be delayed." He guided her out the back way, avoiding the main street. "My office is just behind here. You'll be safe there until we're sure those outlaws have left town." The sheriff's office was a simple building with 2 cells at the back, currently empty, and a desk piled with paperwork at the front. Flynn sat her in his chair and poured her a cup of water from a pitcher. "Drink this," he said gently. "It'll help with the shock." Violet's hands shook as she raised the cup to her lips. "I can't believe this happened." "McCoy's gang has been causing trouble in the territory for months," Flynn explained, kneeling beside her. "But this is the first time they've targeted someone personally like this." The door burst open, and Howard Jenkins stormed in, his face flushed with anger. "What is the meaning of this? I have a church full of important guests waiting." His eyes fell on Violet's disheveled appearance and his expression darkened further. "Look at you. That gown cost a small fortune." Flynn stood, positioning himself subtly between them. "Mr. Jenkins, Miss Preston was just abducted at gunpoint. She's lucky to be alive." Jenkins straightened his jacket. "Yes, well, unfortunate business. But the minister can only wait so long, and I've arranged for the territorial governor to attend the reception." He extended his hand to Violet. "Come, we'll stop by the hotel so you can change quickly." Violet stared at him in disbelief. "Change quickly? I was nearly killed." "You're clearly unharmed," Jenkins replied impatiently. "And I've invested considerable time and money in today's arrangements." Flynn's jaw tightened. "Your bride-to-be needs rest, Jenkins, not to be paraded around at a reception." "This is none of your concern, Sheriff." Jenkins' voice was cold. "You've done your duty. Now I'll take charge of my fiancé." "Actually," Violet said, rising from the chair, "I think I need some time to recover from this ordeal." Jenkins's eyes narrowed. "We have a contract, Miss Preston. I paid for your journey west, provided you with a suitable wardrobe, arranged everything for our life together. You gave me your word. A contract made under duress isn't binding, Flynn interjected quietly. Duress? Jenkins scoffed. I rescued her from poverty. And now you expect her gratitude? Even after she was nearly killed because of your business dealings? Flynn challenged. Jenkins turned to Violet. Is this how it's going to be? You allowing this lawman to speak for you? I selected you specifically because you seemed sensible, pragmatic, not given to emotional hysterics. Violet looked between the two men, Jenkins with his cold, calculating eyes, and Flynn, whose concern for her welfare seemed genuine. I need time to think, she said finally. Today has been overwhelming. There's nothing to think about, Jenkins insisted. We had an agreement. An agreement I'm reconsidering, Violet replied, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. I won't be rushed into this decision, not after what just happened. Jenkins' face hardened. Very well. You have until tomorrow morning to consider. After that, any agreement between us is void, and you'll be responsible for repaying me for all expenses incurred on your behalf. He turned on his heel and strode out, slamming the door behind him. Violet sank back into the chair, trembling. He can't actually force you to pay him back, Flynn said after a moment. Those threats are just that, threats. Even so, what options do I have? I came here to be his wife. I have nowhere else to go, no means to support myself. Flynn pulled up a chair and sat across from her. Sweetwater needs a schoolteacher, he said. The town council set aside money months ago, but we haven't found anyone suitable. With your Boston education? Violet looked up, hope flickering. A teacher? I did work as a governess briefly before coming west. The pay isn't much, but there's a small house that goes with the position. It would give you time to find your footing. Why would you help me like this? She asked softly. He met her gaze directly. Because from the moment I saw you, I knew you deserved better than a loveless arrangement with a man like Jenkins. The intensity in his blue eyes made her heart beat faster. Sheriff Flynn. Owen, he corrected gently. My name is Owen. Owen, she repeated, the name feeling right on her lips. A knock at the door interrupted them. Martha Wilkins entered, carrying a bundle of clothing. I thought you might need something less conspicuous to wear, she explained, eyeing Violet's ruined wedding dress. Thank you, Martha. Violet accepted the bundle gratefully. Jenkins stormed into the hotel, announcing to everyone that the wedding is postponed, Martha reported. Most folks are heading to the reception anyway. Free food and drink is too good to pass up in these parts. Flynn stood. I'll step outside while you change. Then I'll escort you to Martha's place. You can stay there tonight while we sort things out. After he left, Martha helped Violet out of the torn wedding gown. I saw the way he looks at you, she commented as she unlaced the dress. Who? Mr. Jenkins? Martha snorted. No, dear. Sheriff Flynn. That man hasn't shown interest in any woman since his wife died 5 years ago. Violet paused in pulling on the simple day dress Martha had brought. He was married? Yes, to Sarah. Lovely woman. Fever took her and their unborn child. Martha sighed. Nearly destroyed him. He threw himself into his work after that, keeping everyone at arm's length. She smiled knowingly. Until now. Violet's cheeks warmed. I'm sure you're mistaken. He's simply being kind. Owen Flynn is always fair and decent, but I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Martha finished buttoning the back of the dress. There. Much more practical. When Flynn returned, Violet was dressed in the borrowed clothing, her hair unpinned and falling in waves around her shoulders. He seemed momentarily struck speechless. Shall we go? Martha prompted with a barely concealed smile. The three of them left through the back door, avoiding the main street where people were still gathered. As they walked, Flynn explained his idea about the teaching position to Martha, who enthusiastically endorsed it. "It's perfect," she exclaimed. "The council's been desperate to find someone qualified, and the little house by the schoolhouse is charming, needs some work, but it's sound." "I don't know the first thing about teaching in a formal school," Violet worried. "What if I'm not suitable?" "You're educated, patient, and kind," Flynn said. "That's more than suitable." At Martha's house, a cozy apartment above the general store, Violet finally began to relax. Martha prepared a simple dinner and Flynn stayed to eat with them, explaining that his deputy was watching the town in case McCoy's gang returned. As evening fell, Flynn reluctantly rose to leave. "I should make my rounds," he said. "Will you be all right here?" "She'll be just fine," Martha assured him. "My shotgun and I are excellent company." At the door, Flynn hesitated. "Miss Preston, Violet, I want you to know that whatever you decide about Jenkins' offer, you have friends in Sweetwater now. You're not alone." His words touched her deeply. "Thank you, Owen, for everything today." After he left, Martha gave Violet a meaningful look. "That man would walk through fire for you already." "Don't be ridiculous," Violet protested, though her heart fluttered at the thought. "He's just doing his job." "Keep telling yourself that, dear," Martha chuckled. Violet slept fitfully that night, her dreams filled with gunshots and faceless outlaws. She woke early, the decision she faced weighing heavily on her mind. By the time Martha came to check on her, she had made up her mind. "I'm going to decline Mr. Jenkins' proposal," she announced over breakfast, "and accept the teaching position if the town council will have me." Martha beamed. "I knew you had good sense. I'll speak to Councilman Whitaker this morning. He'll be delighted." A knock at the door announced Howard Jenkins, looking as impeccably dressed as ever despite the early hour. "Miss Preston," he said formally when Martha showed him in, "I've come for your decision." Violet stood tall. "I appreciate everything you've done, Mr. Jenkins, but I cannot marry you. Our arrangement was practical, but yesterday made me realize that I want need more than practicality in my life." Jenkins's expression hardened. "I see. Sheriff Flynn has filled your head with romantic nonsense, has he? You'll regret this foolishness. Teaching grubby miners' children for pennies instead of being the wife of the most prosperous man in the territory." "Perhaps," Violet acknowledged, "but it will be my choice, my regret." "And what of your debt to me?" he demanded. "The ticket from Boston alone cost—" "I'll repay you," she interrupted. "Every penny. I may be poor, Mr. Jenkins, but I'm not without honor." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "Very well. I'll have my solicitor draw up an accounting." With that, he turned and left. "Well," Martha said after a moment of silence, "that went better than expected. He didn't even threaten to have you thrown out of town." "No, but he'll make things difficult," Violet sighed. "I can feel it." "Nothing worth having comes easy," Martha replied philosophically. "Now, let's go see about that teaching position." The next few days passed in a whirlwind of activity. The town council enthusiastically approved Violet's appointment as Sweetwater's first proper schoolteacher. The small schoolhouse at the edge of town had been built the previous year, but used only sporadically by various townsfolk taking turns teaching the basics. The attached teacher's cottage was indeed charming, if somewhat neglected. Owen Flynn was conspicuously present throughout the process, helping Violet move into the cottage, repairing broken furniture, and ensuring she had everything she needed. His concern seemed to go beyond professional duty, though he maintained a respectful distance. One evening, a week after her near wedding, Violet was arranging her few belongings in the cottage when there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Owen standing on her small porch, hat in hand. "Sheriff," she greeted him with a smile. "Is everything all right?" "All quiet," he assured her. "I just wanted to check that you're settling in comfortably." She gestured for him to enter. Please, come in. I was just making tea. The cottage was simple but cozy, with a main room serving as both kitchen and living area, a small bedroom, and a tiny study that Violet had already filled with the few books she'd brought from Boston and others borrowed from Martha. It's coming along nicely, he observed, accepting the cup of tea she offered. The school board was impressed with your curriculum plans. They were very kind, Violet said, sitting across from him at the small table. Though I suspect Mr. Jenkins's influence is why some of the wealthier families seem reluctant to enroll their children. Flynn nodded grimly. Jenkins doesn't take rejection well, but give it time. Once they see what you can offer their children, they'll come around. They talked easily as the evening deepened, sharing stories of their pasts. Violet learned that Owen had grown up in Texas, the son of a rancher who'd lost everything in the war. He'd made his own way since he was 16, driving cattle north before settling in Arizona Territory and eventually becoming sheriff. Martha told me about your wife, Violet said gently. I'm so sorry for your loss. Pain flickered in his eyes. Sarah was a wonderful woman, brave enough to follow me out here when most Eastern ladies wouldn't consider it. He smiled sadly. She would have liked you. Tell me about her, Violet encouraged. He did, speaking of Sarah with such tenderness that Violet felt herself falling even deeper under his spell. When he finally rose to leave, the moon was high in the sky. I've kept you too late, he apologized, putting on his hat. Not at all, she assured him. I've enjoyed the company. It gets quiet out here. Too quiet? Do you regret your decision? She shook her head firmly. Not for a moment. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm building something of my own. He smiled, and her heart skipped. Good night, Violet. Good night, Owen. After he left, she stood at the window watching his tall figure disappear down the moonlit path toward town, wondering if he felt the same connection she did. The next morning brought news that chilled her blood. McCoy's gang had struck again, this time at one of Jenkins' smaller mines outside of town. 2 guards had been killed, and the outlaws had escaped with a significant amount of silver ore. Owen rode out with a posse to track them, leaving his deputy in charge of the town. When he hadn't returned by nightfall, Violet found herself pacing anxiously in her cottage, unable to concentrate on her lesson preparations for the school's opening the following week. A knock at her door startled her. She opened it cautiously, relieved to find Martha standing there. Any word? Martha asked, stepping inside. Nothing, Violet replied worriedly. They've been gone all day. Owen knows these hills better than anyone, Martha reassured her. He'll be fine. I can't help but worry. Those men are dangerous. Martha smiled knowingly. You care for him. Violet didn't deny it. Is it that obvious? Only to anyone with eyes, Martha chuckled. And for what it's worth, I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not even Sarah. The sound of horses approaching drew them both to the window. In the dim light of dusk, they could make out several riders approaching the cottage. That's not Owen's posse, Martha said suddenly, her voice sharp with alarm. Those are McCoy's men. Violet's heart pounded. Why would they come here? We need to go, now. Martha grabbed Violet's shawl and thrust it at her. Out the back, quickly. They slipped out the rear door just as pounding started at the front. They ran toward the trees behind the cottage, but a shout told them they'd been spotted. There she is! Get her! The sound of gunfire split the air. Martha stumbled, clutching her side. Go! She gasped, pushing Violet forward. Get to town! I won't leave you! Violet cried, supporting the older woman. You have to, Martha insisted, her face pale. I'll only slow you down. Before Violet could argue further, rough hands grabbed her from behind. She screamed and fought, but it was useless. One of McCoy's men had caught up to them. Got her, boss, he called. McCoy himself approached on horseback, his face partially hidden by his bandana. Well, well, the schoolteacher, Jenkins's cast-off. He nodded to his men. Bring her. Leave the old woman. No. Violet struggled as they dragged her away from Martha, who was slumped against a tree, hand pressed to her bleeding side. They bound her hands and forced her onto a horse. As they rode away, Violet looked back desperately at Martha, praying the wound wasn't fatal and that someone would find her soon. They rode hard for hours, deep into the mountains. Eventually, they reached a hidden canyon where several crude cabins stood. Violet was roughly pulled from the horse and pushed into one of the cabins. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded as McCoy followed her inside. "I'm not with Jenkins. I refuse to marry him." "Don't matter," McCoy replied, removing his bandana to reveal a weather-beaten face with a jagged scar running from his left eye to his jaw. "You're bait. For Flynn." Violet's blood ran cold. "Sheriff Flynn? What do you want with him?" "He killed my brother in that saloon shootout," McCoy snarled, "and he's been hunting us ever since. Time to end it." "He was protecting me. Your men were going to kill me." "My brother's still dead." McCoy's eyes were hard. "Flynn will come for you. Man's sweet on you, anyone can see it. And when he does, we'll be waiting." With that, he left, locking the door behind him. Violet sank onto a rickety cot in the corner, fighting tears of frustration and fear. Not for herself, but for Owen, who might indeed walk into a trap for her sake, and Martha, poor Martha, wounded and alone in the woods. Had anyone found her yet? Would she survive? Hours passed. Violet dozed fitfully, waking at every sound. Near dawn, she heard raised voices outside. Creeping to the small window, she peered out to see McCoy arguing with one of his men. "Posse all over these mountains," the man was saying. "They found our trail." "Let them come," McCoy replied confidently. "We have the high ground and the girl." "There's too many of them, boss. Jenkins has hired extra guns professional bounty hunters. We should cut our losses, head for Mexico." "Not without settling with Flynn," McCoy insisted. Violet's heart leaped. A posse was coming, but with bounty hunters in the mix, the situation could quickly turn deadly. She needed to escape, to warn Owen about the trap. Examining the cabin in the growing light, she noticed the rear wall had several rotted boards where the roof leaked. If she could pry one loose. She worked quietly, using a loose nail from the cot to scrape at the decayed wood. It was slow, painstaking work, and her hands were soon bleeding from splinters, but gradually one board began to give. Outside, the camp was in a flurry of activity. Men positioned themselves on the canyon ridges with rifles, while others prepared the horses for a possible quick escape. By midday, Violet had created a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. Waiting for a moment when no one was watching the back of the cabin, she slipped out and crawled into the underbrush. The canyon was surrounded by steep walls, but a narrow game trail wound up one side. Keeping low and moving slowly to avoid detection, Violet made her way toward it. She had nearly reached the trail when a shout went up from the camp. "She's gone! The girl's escaped!" Men scrambled in all directions. Violet abandoned stealth for speed, racing up the trail as fast as her skirts would allow. Behind her, she could hear the pursuit closing in. The trail switchbacked up the canyon wall, growing steeper and more treacherous. Violet's lungs burned and her legs trembled with exertion, but fear drove her onward. A bullet ricocheted off the rock near her head. She ducked instinctively but kept moving. The top of the canyon was just ahead if she could reach it. She might find cover in the forest beyond. Just as she crested the rim, strong arms grabbed her, pulling her down into the cover of boulders. She fought wildly until a familiar voice cut through her panic. "Violet, it's me. You're safe." Owen Flynn's face swam into focus, his blue eyes intense with concern. "Owen." She collapsed against him, relief flooding through her. "Thank God. Are you hurt?" His hands moved gently over her, checking for injuries. No, I'm fine. But Martha, they shot her. Is she? Martha's alive, he assured her quickly. Doc Palmer's taking care of her. The wound wasn't serious. Violet nearly sobbed with relief. McCoy's set a trap for you, she warned. He blames you for his brother's death. I know. Owen's expression was grim. We've had the canyon surrounded since dawn. Jenkins brought in hired guns. Seems McCoy's raid on his mine hit him where it hurt. As if on cue, gunfire erupted from the canyon below. Owen pulled Violet deeper into cover as bullets whined overhead. My deputy's leading a group around the back way, he explained, and Jenkins's men are closing in from the east. McCoy's trapped. This is all my fault, Violet whispered. If I hadn't come to Sweetwater. Don't, Owen said firmly. McCoy and Jenkins have been at each other's throats for years. You were just caught in the middle. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. I'm just grateful you're safe. The gunfight below intensified, then gradually began to taper off. Finally, a signal whistle sounded from the canyon. It's over, Owen said, helping Violet to her feet. That's my deputies all clear. They made their way carefully down a different trail to the canyon floor. The scene that greeted them was one of grim aftermath. Several of McCoy's men lay dead or wounded, while others sat disarmed under guard. McCoy himself was being bound by Owen's deputy, blood streaming from a wound in his shoulder. You should have killed me when you had the chance. Flynn, McCoy spat as Owen approached. Unlike you, I don't shoot men in cold blood, Owen replied evenly. You'll hang proper, after a fair trial. Jenkins rode up, flanked by several hard-faced men who could only be the bounty hunters. Sheriff, he acknowledged coldly before his eyes fell on Violet. Miss Preston, I see you've managed to cause trouble yet again. This wasn't her doing, Jenkins, Owen said sharply. No? Jenkins raised an eyebrow. McCoy would never have been bold enough to attack my mine if you hadn't weakened his fear of the law by letting him escape from the saloon. His gaze turned calculating. The town council might be interested to hear how your personal feelings have compromised your effectiveness as sheriff. That's enough. Violet stepped forward, anger overcoming her exhaustion. Sheriff Flynn has done nothing but protect this town and me at great personal risk. If you want to blame someone for McCoy's vendetta, perhaps you should consider your own actions in driving these men to desperation. Jenkins' face flushed with anger. You know nothing about it. I know that a good man was nearly killed because of a feud you helped create, she retorted. And I know that threatening the sheriff who just recovered your stolen silver is hardly the action of a grateful citizen. For a moment, it seemed Jenkins might continue the argument. Then, surprisingly, his expression shifted to one of grudging respect. You've more spine than I gave you credit for, Miss Preston. He turned to Owen. My men will help transport the prisoners to town. As Jenkins rode away, Owen looked at Violet with undisguised admiration. Remind me never to get on your bad side. She smiled weakly, the adrenaline of the confrontation fading and leaving her trembling with exhaustion. Can we go home now? Home, he repeated softly, his eyes warm. Yes. Let's get you home. The ride back to Sweetwater took several hours. Owen insisted Violet ride with him, her back pressed against his chest, his arms around her to hold the reins. Despite her exhaustion, she was acutely aware of his nearness, the solid strength of him behind her. I was terrified when I heard they'd taken you, he admitted quietly, his breath warm against her ear. If anything had happened to you. But it didn't, she reminded him. You found me. I'll always find you, he promised, the words sending a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the cooling evening air. In town, a crowd had gathered to witness the return of the posse and their prisoners. Martha was there, pale but standing with the support of Doc Palmer, her side heavily bandaged. Violet rushed to embrace her gently. You're all right. takes more than a bullet to keep me down," Martha assured her with a weak smile. "Though I might take a few days off from the store." "You'll stay with me," Violet insisted. "I'll look after you." As the prisoners were led away to the jail, Jenkins approached Owen and Violet. "Sheriff, the territorial governor would like to personally commend you for capturing McCoy's gang. I've taken the liberty of arranging a small celebration at the hotel tonight." Owen looked surprised. "That's unexpectedly generous of you, Jenkins." "McCoy's raids were bad for business," Jenkins replied pragmatically, "and I recognize valuable allies when I see them." His eyes flickered to Violet. "Both of you." After Jenkins walked away, Owen shook his head in wonder. "I think you actually impressed him." "Wonders never cease," Violet laughed. "Will you attend his celebration?" "Only if you'll accompany me," Owen replied, suddenly serious. "As my guest." Martha, who had been shamelessly eavesdropping, chimed in. "She accepts. Now go get cleaned up, both of you. You look like you've been dragged through the wilderness." "We have," Violet pointed out, looking down at her torn and filthy dress. "All the more reason to make an entrance tonight," Martha insisted. "Show everyone in Sweetwater what you're made of." That evening, Violet wore one of the dresses Jenkins had purchased for her, a deep green silk that brought out the color of her eyes. It felt strangely fitting to wear it to an event hosted by the man she'd refused to marry. Owen called for her at Martha's rooms above the store, as Violet had insisted the older woman stay with her until fully recovered. When she opened the door, his stunned expression made her cheeks warm. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "You clean up rather well yourself, Sheriff," she replied, taking in his dark suit and freshly trimmed beard. The celebration at the hotel was surprisingly cordial. The territorial governor praised Owen's bravery and leadership, while Jenkins announced a reward for the capture of McCoy and the recovery of his silver. As the evening progressed, Jenkins approached Violet while Owen was speaking with the governor. "You would have made a suitable wife," he observed, watching her over the rim of his whiskey glass. "But not a happy one," she replied honestly. He nodded. "Perhaps not. Though I believe you would have adapted." "Is that what you want in a wife, Mr. Jenkins? Someone who merely adapts?" He considered this, then surprised her with a genuine smile. "You know, I've never actually thought about it that way." He glanced toward Owen. "Flynn's a good man, one of the few in these parts I actually respect." "Yes, he is," Violet agreed softly. "Well then." Jenkins straightened his jacket. "I believe I'll withdraw my objections to the school board funding your position properly. Education is, after all, vital to the future of Sweetwater." Violet stared at him in amazement. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins." He shrugged. "Consider it a wedding gift." At her startled expression, he chuckled. "Come now, Miss Preston. Anyone with eyes can see where things are heading between you and our sheriff." With that, he walked away, leaving Violet speechless. Owen found her moments later. "What did Jenkins want?" "To give us his blessing, apparently," she replied, still bemused. "And to properly fund the school." Owen raised his eyebrows. "That's unexpected." "The man is full of surprises." She smiled up at him. "Would you mind if we stepped outside? It's rather warm in here." The hotel had a small veranda overlooking the main street. In the moonlight, Sweetwater Creek looked almost peaceful, the rough edges of the frontier town softened by shadow. "I never thanked you properly," Violet said after a comfortable silence, "for saving my life, twice." Owen turned to face her, his expression serious in the silvery light. "I should be thanking you." "For what?" "For bringing light back into my life." His voice was low, intimate. "After Sarah died, I never thought I'd feel this way again. Never wanted to." Violet's heart quickened. "And how do you feel, Owen?" He took her hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. Like I've found something I didn't even know I was looking for. He hesitated. I know it's too soon. You've barely settled in Sweetwater. And, after everything you've been through, she stopped him by placing her finger against his lips. It's not too soon. Not when you know something is right. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down and kissed her. It was gentle at first, tentative, but deepened as she responded, her arms twining around his neck. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Violet Preston. I think I have since the moment I saw you. And I love you, Owen Flynn, she whispered back, my cowboy hero. He smiled at that, then grew serious again. I don't have much to offer. The sheriff's pay isn't grand. And this town is my home now, she interrupted. Our home. The school opened the following Monday, with 15 students ranging from 6 to 16 years old. To Violet's surprise, several of the wealthier families did enroll their children, including the banker's twin daughters and the hotel owner's son. Martha recovered quickly and returned to running the general store, though she visited Violet often at the schoolhouse. Jenkins, true to his word, ensured the school board provided adequate funding for supplies and even donated books from his personal library. McCoy and his gang were transferred to the territorial prison in Yuma to await trial. The town gradually returned to normal, though now when Violet walked down the street, she was greeted warmly as teacher instead of stared at as Jenkins' mail-order bride. Owen called at the schoolhouse every afternoon when classes ended, ostensibly to ensure the teacher's safety, though no one was fooled by this transparent excuse to spend time with Violet. They would walk together through town or along the creek, talking and planning their future. 3 months after the showdown with McCoy's gang on a crisp autumn Saturday, Owen and Violet were married in the same church where she had nearly become Mrs. Jenkins. This time, however, the bride fairly glowed with happiness as she spoke her vows to the man she truly loved. Martha served as her matron of honor, while Owen's deputy stood as best man. Even Howard Jenkins attended, presenting them with a silver tea service that must have cost a small fortune. For your future entertainments as the sheriff's wife, he explained to Violet at the reception. Sweetwater society expects certain standards. She accepted the gift graciously. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Though I expect I'll still be primarily known as the school teacher. As you should be, he agreed, surprising her. You've done wonders with those children. My foreman's boy couldn't write his name 3 months ago. Now he's reading entire books. As Jenkins walked away, Owen joined her, slipping an arm around her waist. Enjoying your wedding day more this time? She laughed, leaning into him. Infinitely more. That evening, he carried her over the threshold of his small house, now their home just a few streets over from the schoolhouse. Welcome home, Mrs. Flynn, he said softly, setting her on her feet but keeping his arms around her. Home, she repeated, savoring the word. It's strange. I came to Sweetwater seeking security through marriage, never imagining I'd find both security and love, just not with the man I expected. Life has a way of surprising us, he agreed, brushing a tendril of hair from her face. When I saw those outlaws threatening you in the saloon that day, all I could think was that I needed to keep you safe. Behind me, you're safe, I told you. But the truth is, I'm the one who's found safety in you. In us. She reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his beard. I never thought I'd be grateful for being accosted by outlaws, but if that hadn't happened, we'd have found each other anyway, he said with certainty. Some things are just meant to be. As his lips met hers, Violet knew he was right. Her journey west had been motivated by desperation and the need for security, but it had led her to true love and a sense of belonging she'd never known before. 1 year later, the schoolhouse had doubled in size, with Violet supervising an assistant teacher to accommodate all the students. Owen had been re-elected sheriff by unanimous vote, his handling of the McCoy gang having cemented his reputation as the most effective lawman in the territory. On their first wedding anniversary, they stood together on the porch of their expanded home. Owen had added 2 rooms in anticipation of their growing family. Violet's hand rested on her slightly rounded belly as she leaned against her husband's strong shoulder. Did you ever imagine this is where life would lead you? A respected sheriff with a schoolteacher wife and a baby on the way? Owen covered her hand with his, a gesture of tenderness that still made her heart swell after a year of marriage. No, but I wouldn't change a single moment that brought us here. He kissed her temple. When I think of how close you came to marrying Jenkins, I would never have gone through with it, she assured him. Even before you rescued me at the saloon, I was having doubts. But when you said behind me, you're safe, something changed. I felt it instantly. So did I, he admitted. It scared me how quickly you broke through the walls I'd built. Inside their home, Martha called out, "Dinner's ready, lovebirds." They had invited Martha, Doc Palmer, and a few close friends to celebrate their anniversary. As they turned to go inside, Violet paused for one more look at Sweetwater Creek, now thriving with new businesses and homes. I came west looking for security, she said softly, but I found so much more. Owen smiled, his blue eyes warm with love. And to think it all started with a mail-order bride, some outlaws, and a saloon. Don't forget the handsome cowboy sheriff, Violet added with a smile, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. I'm just glad I was there when you needed me, he replied, and I always will be. Hand in hand, they walked into their home, into the warmth and light of the life they had built together on the wild frontier, a life neither had expected, but both now cherished above all else.